now call the meeting. Here. Committee member here. Number 4 here. Chair Garrett. Here. Committee member 4 here. Committee member Sherman. Committee member Silent here. Committee member Crosswood. Committee member Christensen. Committee member here. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes length. Remember to state your name and address for the record. If you have not filled out a comment card yet, please wish to speak, please fill out a card. All right, so the first one is Ginger. Thank you for the time. I wish to speak on the topic of Independence Days being transferred to another organization to be run. Independence Day serves as a crucial identity marker for our town, not only attracting tourism dollars to downtown businesses during the event, but also acting as a catalyst for economic growth through our multiplier effect. It generates additional revenue for ancillary businesses like grocery stores and fuel stations, functions as a powerful marketing tool for tourism throughout the year, and enhances tax flow. I'm sure you're aware that the news of this potential change to Independence Days has brought about many questions in the community. Included in these questions are, have strategic measures been taken to assess the impact of transferring this event into new hands? Has the city considered continuing the event but with a different approach? Perhaps cutting out one day of the event, altering the musical lineup, or even considering partnering with the community board to continue this event rather than shifting all costs to others? It seems like a decision to immediately transfer the event to another organization is hasty. What if no other organizations can carry on the event? Does this excitement over the town of Independence just fade away like other small towns? In a time filled with uncertainty, it is vital for our community to feel assured of its stability. Do you remember your first time attending Indie Days? For many, this memory creates a sense of nostalgia and the good old days. If another organization is not able to bear the load of this event, this sense of stability is lost, as evidenced in the negative feedback that is growing in the community over this event. This message we must communicate is that our city leaders believe in and are committed to the future of independence. Let's reframe our perspective on this event. The perspective on this event, not as a burden, but as a fundamental support in the overall community. In closing, as a community, we would like to see a proposal from the city regarding the planning and transfer of Indie Days and the details related to what the city's involvement, if any, will be in the event for the review of other city organizations and partners being asked to take over the planning. Thank you very much. Sure, yes.
I'm just hearing from staff that there's a big audio issue with Zoom tonight. So everybody speak slowly, loudly, and clearly. Otherwise, the folks who are joining us on Zoom won't be able to understand.
The other comment we have is from Vicky. My name is Vicky McCubbin. I live at 7th Street. And I'm the chair of the Museum Advisory Board, past Museum Society Board member. Been volunteering at the Heritage Museum in both locations for 9 years and under 4 directors. Though the advisory board has no spending authority, it is tasked to review and comment on the budget as developed by city management. In past years, the advisory board and the Museum Society have explored the feasibility of making the old location fully ADA compliant, and it just wasn't possible. And so the museum moved. Sitting at the front desk of the current location, welcoming guests, assisting with research, writing scripts for tours, and conducting them is a great joy.
This space is an inspiring and welcoming place for community members, tourists, and school groups that is accessible to people in wheelchairs, parents with strollers, and those less able to climb the stairs of the old location. Though no admission is charged, a donation tube is available, and those who are able often make generous contributions. The positive comments from young and old make it difficult for me to know that our beautiful location will likely be sold, but a vote was taken by the community, and it is time to plan for the future. I believe, and the board believes, the city management and this budget committee is doing all it can to preserve the museum collection. For Amy to work from the, museum curator, acting director Amy Christensen, and library director Patrick Bodley have created a plan, including the safeguarding of the museum's artifacts and storage. For Amy to work from the library, creating pop-ups in the community and providing online services while continuing to be a community resource. While this is a great plan, it is intended to be a temporary measure. It is important that the city, the boards, and the community provide for a future where the museum has an eventual permanent location, whether it be in a location separate from the library or in the expanded library location. The museum board and the library advisory board, also a map, have formed subcommittees to meet jointly to plan for finding ways to support the city in its further advocating for both the museum and the library to secure positive futures for both entities. In summary, our desire is that the city, along with the support from the museum board, the society, and the community, continue to look for an affordable location where the museum can fulfill its mission statement to collect and share the natural history and diverse cultural heritage of the river community of Independence.
This Alex is not looking well, so we just wanted to give you. So we'll
You know, just
So
like, I think.
it's just that people don't
Yes, yeah.
want to use.
Check. Check. Balance.
Okay, I get the accounting.
Very appropriate.
That was pretty good.
That was not a bad accounting.
Credit, debit.
Okay,
It's
Jason says we're good.
It's
so-
accrual.
Thank you.
Does it need to be sent?
I was there for that.
Oh, it's just a break.
Meeting for our-
We know we'll get there. Yeah. All right, thank you. We're all ready, right?
Believe so. He says fixed.
Okay, so we'll call back to order, get back on track, whatever you use.
Recess.
On recess. Recess, all right. So now we're on to budget presentation continued. The
Okay.
staff will now present information on the general fund and other funds.
So I want to start the evening tonight, and again, thank you all for taking time to be here. We appreciate your time. So I want to start tonight with an update on general fund revenues as they relate to the Urban Renewal Agency. We started this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and we'll hear more about it when we get to the urban renewal funds, but it's worth mentioning at this point as we get things started. So we did receive a preliminary draft report from our consultant, and their findings are similar to ours in that the current cash flows of the URA, the Urban Renewal Agency, can pay all of our debt service on the bonds, can pay the SDC loans, but they're not sufficient to support the scheduled payments to the general fund in the short term. Okay, which is consistent with what I was telling you a couple of weeks ago. Projections that were made in 2016 simply did not play out. The agency's overall financial activity is about $2.1 million behind those projections due to a combination of lower collections and timing / amount of payments made since that time. There is no money missing, lost, or unpaid. I want to be very clear about that. It's just a matter of the actual flow of funds being different than the flow of funds that was expected. I liken it to, I can go out and buy a lottery ticket and I can plan for how I'm gonna spend that money if I win. But when I don't win, it just becomes kind of a game of what if, right? The money isn't lost, it just didn't play into my expectations. So what does all this mean for the general fund budget? This is the part that's hard. We're going to need to reduce the payments from the Urban Renewal Agency to the general fund and reduce the general fund contingency basically to zero for 25-26. It's about a $600,000 hit in the 25-26 budget. So
what page are you looking at?
I'm not on a page yet. Have it, I'm not on a page.
This is new information. Yeah, but what page
So-
is the
General fund.
General fund is.
21.
Thank you.
Well, on page 21, the contingency.
What was originally proposed at 1,018,000 has been adjusted down to, I think, 558,000. It's going to be basically zero as of right now. So with that bright and cheery news, I'll turn it over to Sean, who will take us through the Economic Development Loan Fund, and we'll kind of work through the rest of these funds that we have. And then at that point, we can open it up to the deliberation of the committee on basically anything you want to talk about in the budget, with an ultimate goal of passing this thing at some point. So Sean?
And just for their clarity, it'd be this budget and then followed by your renewal, and is that the time to talk about? the
Right.
renewal?
Right, urban renewal is about 4 funds away from this conversation.
All right. Well, with that great handoff,
Sorry. Mayor Kate has told me I'm just Mr. Bad News.
So, all right, so we're starting with the Economic Development Loan Fund. If you've been on the budget committee for a few years, you'll probably remember this, not a lot tends,
Page 80.
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's my one page.
You're good.
Just for a second, let people make sure they're on the right spot. All right, so if you've been on the budget committee for a couple, 3 years, you probably noticed that not a lot goes on with this fund. This is where essentially it is revenue that was originally loaned out, I believe in the sixties or seventies, to help with projects back then. It was federal money. As the loan was repaid, it became defederalized, and the city essentially put it into this fund as a revolving loan to support business development within the community. There's, it's made a number of loans since then, which is why you're continuing to see, proceeds coming in the economic development loans category there, as well as in the investment interest. I'm assuming is more the interest being made on the existing fund
That's
balance.
correct.
But you'll see it's got a pretty sizable chunk of money in there, about $900,000. And typically what I've been doing every year is I just put a placeholder in saying, if we were to make a loan this year, I'd like to have just $100,000 there to enable us to do that without a budget adjustment. Similarly, we've been doing facade grants from this program, and so I put a placeholder in there for that. This fund, I mean, like I say, it has not had a lot of activity in the last probably about a decade. I actually went back in the records and looked at the last loan we did was in 2011. That's, I think, in large part because the Council of Governments also has a loan program with very similar terms. And it's actually their banker or their finance person, is the same person. So he basically administers both loans. So we find somebody who has a business, needs a loan, we send them to him. And for the most part, if they end up doing a loan, it ends up going with the Council of Governments. Similarly, we have not done many facade grants lately. I think it's probably been 5 or 6 years, actually probably more like 7 or 8 since we've done a facade grant. And honestly, if you look at downtown, there's not a lot of additional places that really need facade improvement. So.
Yeah.
So I say that because in the last meeting, I heard a few people express an interest in not kind of losing track of the economic development aspect or the long-term perspective on sort of cutting so far that we can't continue to grow as a community and be prepared when things get better. And so I guess what I would say is, if there's an interest from this committee in supporting, some type of nearer term economic development activity over the next couple of years, this would be an opportunity to potentially transfer some funds from this program to the economic development department for the purpose of doing economic development work over the last couple of years. If we were to do that, I would say, $30,000 each year for a total 2 years, total of $60,000. Transfer that to economic development fund. We can use that to tackle economic development more over the next couple of years in spite of these cuts.
And would that be a way to sort of start to build or grow our way out of this hole we're in for Measure 5?
That would be the intent, is we need to continue to grow. We obviously want to continue to development of the trade sector industry within the community as well as the downtown. And so that would be a way to approach that issue.
Member Alex has a question.
I'll wait till,
Okay.
yeah, thanks.
I mean, that's honestly, that's pretty much it. This is an opportunity, like I said, I heard an interest in kind of not losing track of that. And so this is a way to possibly do that. Doesn't mean we have to do it, but I wanted to put it out there.
I guess the question I'd have is what are you thinking about putting it on the bone for 30 years?
That is the question. So, the high level answer would be, I mean, we'd be looking at doing something around, you know, the industrial sector. How can we get more industry into the community, into our empty buildings, potentially look at the urban renewal district? How can we, you know, generate more development there? I don't have a lot of specific details at this point.
I'm seeing the sources on this being pretty consistent over the years. And I see that we had estimated $100,000 in loans and 20,000 in facade grants and used none of that, so we're putting that back in place this year. I also know that there are funds available to developing businesses downtown through the Main Street grant, which runs through the Independence Downtown Association, doesn't deplete or increase this fund at all, but it does help local businesses. Is there any reason, since there's 841,000 in contingency, is there any reason we couldn't move some of that contingency into the general fund?
No reason at all. That could be moved into the general fund contingency. It's actually a good idea to backfill what the URA is failing to pay us. And that's a good idea. It would refill the contingency, so we wouldn't be at zero.
So that could bring us back to parity in the general fund if we made that move.
Correct.
Jessica?
To piggyback on that, and then a clarification question. So that would mean though that the general consensus that we had last week, where everybody would still like to keep the doors open for putting money into things in the future when we do get that opportunity, that money wouldn't be there anymore if we moved it to the contingency now. Is that correct?
If you swept all of it, yes. I mean, you know, there is revenue still coming into this fund. So, you know, there's a, I think looks like $50,000 expected to come in this coming budget year. Presumably it'll be about the same next year. So that would continue to build.
And then the 60,000 that Sean asked to pull out is enough for 2 years, which would allow this to rebuild to about 100,000.
Okay, that is a really good idea. What are you thinking? Like, how would that 30,000 per year be used? Like, I know that the aim is to like seek out industrial partners and bring them into town, and that would develop the local economy for sure. But like, is that $30,000? There's $30,000 for a staff person? Is it for recruiting? Like, what does that actually look like?
So definitely not a staff person as in a city staff, because this is one way or another, this is one-time money. It'll be limited term. And so hiring a staff person wouldn't be appropriate. More than likely, it would be some type of contract with a person or a firm or a something. I can't offer, like I said, there's a lot of nuance here. And, you know, you heard me at the last meeting. I talked about recruitment as you kind of got to make sure the juice is worth the squeeze, because I mean, you can do all the things right and still not land somebody. So I mean, I would look at trying to figure out a way to, you know, target industry and get it here, fill our buildings, you know, maybe get some additional development on bare ground. But the specifics of how to go about that, you know, it would be a contract with somebody to do something, but those deliverables and how we would ensure that we have a reasonable chance of success, I don't quite have an answer to yet.
So it's kind of like a recruiter.
More or less, yes.
Okay, I like that. And
So right now I have Aaron and then Evan and then Nathan is the order I saw you guys. Are you?
He was first.
Oh, okay.
I just don't.
Oh, okay. Right, Evan.
Thank you, Chair. Can you talk a little bit about the terms that are for the loan funds that people are currently borrowing?
Yeah, so typically it's, I don't know, the current rate, I don't actually know what the current rate is. It's at the, what's the term for the government pool, OGIP, it's OGIP plus a percent or two, I believe. It ends up in a situation like this where interest rates are higher, it ends up being a point or two lower than typical, a typical loan would be. The terms in terms of length and repayment schedules are pretty flexible. It's a bankable loan, so you do have to have collateral, you gotta do all the same stuff you would do at a bank. The best, you know, we always say kind of the preferred scenario actually is that somebody has a bank that they're already working with. And this can kind of come in as gap funding or otherwise, you know, help kind of flesh out a deal as opposed to just sort of being the loan the bank otherwise would give.
You said that the last time we kind of advertised about these funds were in 2011.
Yeah, 2011, it is because,
Well, it wasn't that we advertised, it was the last time anyone accessed
yeah,
it.
because I mean, if I'm talking to a business owner, I ask them if they need capital, I ask them kind of what they're looking for, and I'll talk to them about the loan program. But typically I'll send them to, I send them to the Council of Governments because that's our person who's managing the fund. He also has, the Council of Governments fund, and so, generally, it has essentially the same terms. And so for the most part, it's, I've kind of said, well, let's use their money and keep our powder dry for something else in the future.
I guess my question is how many more years are we receiving payments for these if the last time anyone accessed that was?
A long time.
Oh, okay.
That's a technical term, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I can't tell you exactly how many years, but I know it's more than 10 or 12.
Okay, that's what, thank you. So we have confidence for the next decade we'll be receiving funds.
All right, Karen?
Thinking about how you use these funds and at what point could you utilize these monies to draw down or match some sort of state loan program, whether it be through Business Oregon, whether it be through Small Business Administration? Is there enough there, or are those grants at a rate that you could use those funds to draw down, whether it be industrial site readiness or whether it be other tools that we don't necessarily have the capacity for, but that with some $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in matching or 20% or whatever, then you utilize those funds for that.
I think definitely, yes, I'd say probably as it's currently budgeted, no.
Nathan?
I think my question may have been answered in the process of Jessica and Evan talking through it, but my question was about you said, like, since 2011, we haven't had any loans come out of this fund. And I guess my question is, it sounds like there's appetite in the committee here to make sure that we are utilizing this. So am I correct in saying that you're now not just going to funnel people to the COG, but actually start using this as well?
Well, so I guess I would say it depends. If you all want to see more loans going out, then yeah, I would say, okay, sure, I'll start saying, hey,
In addition to, right? Like,
yeah.
in addition to the Council of Governments, let's start using everything we have, right?
I mean, yeah, yes, I guess from my perspective, you've got sort of two of the same loan fund. So why not use the one loan fund and then find something else to do with the other money? And that was originally, honestly, I had been looking at this saying, let's turn this into more of a micro loan program. Whereas our loans are up to 200,000 or so, why don't we go up to, do smaller loans? But actually through the Ford Family Foundation, we have access to actually a micro loan program that goes up to 50,000, has more favorable terms, does pretty much everything that I would have wanted to do. This came on a year or two ago. And so kind of similarly, like, I don't want to recreate that program, and I'm not sure there's enough, kind of room down in the like up to $5,000 limit for lending to really make it make sense. Plus those get a whole lot more risky.
Well, I was just gonna say that, your earlier comment about keeping the powder dry, like, I think the appetite here is, at least from my perspective, it's the time to use the powder. So I'm just making that encouragement for whatever ideas you have to utilize this more robustly.
John?
Thank you.
I'm just concerned about the no contingency in the general fund. I think sending this money back there would be the best use of it at this time, keeping the ability to earn money over time in this, so the opportunity doesn't close forever. My question is, because it seems like some people want to turn this into the economic development fund. What is the major return on investment that we've had in the past 5 years on the economic development fund? Because it still seems like to me, we have an 18-month window for businesses and there's a lot of shuttering businesses. I don't see a lot of growth in the last 5 years.
I mean, I'd have to pull data if you want, sort of business openings and closings and that kind of stuff. I mean, honestly, in the last 5 years, what I would say is we saw through COVID, we actually did not have as many closures as most communities did. I think we still, we're right now currently definitely going for a downswing where we've got some closures, we've got some vacant storefronts. But the downtown, we still do have a number of good businesses going there. I'd say in the last year, 2 years, I'd say there's been a downswing, but before that, we were on strong rates, I'd say.
Have
That's
we
my
recovered
own-
from Marquis?
No, no, we need that employment. I mean, that's the employment thing.
Can we get any more employment with the current infrastructure we have?
Yes, to the asterisk of, you know, like food processing is a big deal around here and with all the agriculture. And so food processing is a natural target for us. The problem is it tends to use a lot of water and sewer. And so with our current, you know, wastewater treatment plant, and with our current water system, we can accommodate that to a point. And so it can still, I mean, there's still plenty of opportunities out there, I would say, you know, to bring that type of industry, but we have to be a little more careful about the type of food processor that we bring.
Which is why we're talking about that 60,000 is pulling 60,000 and using it for the economic development, looking at those industrial opportunities. Marquee and Forest River to get those filled and get them jobs.
Jessica was next.
But I'm,
Good.
the Shannon was next after you. I got a list.
You told us that you're only doing passive recruitment right now. And we just heard about losing the contingency in the general fund. Can we both backfill the general fund and do active recruitment?
So this, the 60,000 that Sean talked about is active recruitment.
Definitely, that would be what we would be looking at using that.
And what would
Yes.
that put into the contingency pot in the general fund? We did that.
About 840,000.
I mean, I think the COG and Business Oregon and organizations like that are better staffed to do this kind of work. I'm worried about our staffing. If you can only do passive recruitment and you gotta do these loans and all these grants and all this kind of garbage. Not saying it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's good.
Slate.
But it just seems like those organizations could, if they've been doing it, they can continue to do it. And I'd rather see active recruitment here and get our tax base increased. That seems a better use of the time and effort.
Dana, you had a question, or you had it, then you moved it off.
Yeah, no, okay.
Hey,
Couple of things,
no, she was.
Nope.
We'll get next. Thanks,
Looking out.
thanks for having my back.
There it is.
So I do think this fund is, the mission of this fund, right, is to help support business and business development. So I do think it's a good use of funds to make sure that we can actively keep recruitment going. I would want that to be very specific, very targeted with like a scope of work attached to it versus just a general, we have some money to kind of try to do something with. I am a little bit concerned, right, that we look at this sort of like, oh, there's this windfall that we just found and we can just transfer this and make it all work. In the sense that we still have some structural issues that we're gonna face next year. So this is very much like a one-time use of money, and so I want us to be really cognizant of that, because my concern is we're not gonna rebuild that as quickly, and yes, I agree, like, it's that push-pull of saving it to employ, but if we never employ it, it can't be out there doing good, in the community, so I just don't want to feel like this solves all of our problems, and then a question about the COG. So I understand like the COG has their loan fund and loaning that out, but then if we loaned it, right, wouldn't we be getting the payments? We would be realizing some sort of interest off of that, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. And so is the COG sort of pushing their fund because now they're getting the interest from it?
I mean, it's possible.
Okay. All right. I just want to maybe throw that out there in the equation as well. If we're not, if we're just kind of sitting on this money, not doing anything, and they're actually getting benefit from employing theirs and getting money back, then yes, I think we should be maybe a little more strategic about
I mean, we are earning interest off of this money.
Yes.
I don't know offhand, I didn't know or less than if we had been loaning it out, right? But that's what my take on
Happy that.
Where are we with Western Intermodal?
They are hopefully gonna be coming in this summer to do some initial excavation work, and they're looking to do and get seriously going in spring of next year. They have, they did tell us that based on economic conditions, they were pushing back, and that is what this 26, spring of 26 schedule, that's where that came about.
Thank you.
Carolyn? A couple of questions. First of all, just wanted to clarify, any movement that goes from the contingency fund in the economic development loan fund to the general fund is in no way, shape or form an interfund loan.
That's correct.
And Sean, do you know what because I hate those. Maximum available through Main Street grants is now?
This last year, it was $400,000, a $400,000 grant for.
That's a lot of money to come into the community. Do we have any remaining industrial type land that could be used for a new business?
Yeah, got several, larger parcels and a couple of smaller ones too.
Okay, and please suggest to Ovenbird that they need to get a facade grant for a new awning. It's sustained by bird poop currently.
Anybody else? Chair, if I may, yes, our role is always to inform and educate. And so I would just like to clarify that if a motion is made to move this money, it goes to go into the general fund contingency. I'll kind of follow up on Kate. That contingency number, what you're doing is you're backfilling what has been taken away. That is an extra money. We're still gonna have really hard discussions for this year. That is just to make sure that we can keep the lights on between July and November. And if the elevator fails again, that we have the money to fix it. That's all that is it extra money, and I'm just kind of making sure that everyone's aware of that, because I get a little itchy that, it might be pulled out, because our general fund should be around 1.4 million.
1.8.
1.8 million. This is going to put us at maybe 800,000. Okay, so we are not fixed. We are just not.
Buying time.
So broken, right? We can get through this year. So just clarity.
Just to clarify, so with this kind of somewhat proposal that we've been discussing, we could transfer 800,000 basically to contingency.
I'd have to run the numbers. Did you run the numbers in your head? Are you sure they're right?
Really?
How? And that would be, but also that would pull out, like, say, 60,000, that would be spent over 2 years for consulting services or however, to help further economic development, and 800 to, yeah,
If that's the motion
if
made.
that's the motion made, right, that's what we've been kind of discussing.
Evan?
Question was. It's all right.
It'll come back to you.
That's hard. Is there a minimum that would be beneficial to keep in this amount, or in this account?
I was just gonna say, so we're not planning on closing the fund.
No, I
And,
understand that.
and you're going to have, in terms of keep maintaining a balance in here. I don't know, but we're gonna continue to receive somewhere around 30 to 35,000 a year in payments. Obviously, the interest earnings will go down because that big old balance is gonna go somewhere else. But you'll still get some interest earnings in terms of maintaining a balance in here. If you're not going to make loans or facade grants from this fund, it's kind of just anybody's call.
Does the contingency in the general fund not earn interest?
It does.
Oh, okay. So then,
That's sorta, contingency is an authority thing. The general fund has cash that earns interest, yes.
Dana?
So, this is more of a structural question, but, it says in here, special revenue funds, city budgets and maintain special revenue funds to account for the expenditure and resources that are either restricted by an outside third party or by enabling legislation. So this fund isn't either one of those.
It's also, special revenue funds by definition can also deal with revenues that are committed by the council. And this fund was established by council action.
Which leads me to my question, do we know what council's intent was with setting these funds aside? I mean, obviously to loan money out, but
That was it.
Yeah.
did they have thoughts of revenue generation from that, from interest?
Not based on a review of the establishing documents for this fund.
Okay.
It was established by resolution
Was Counselor Morton here with that?
And
in the 1700s. I don't think so.
Salty.
final question, so is there anything else, or is there anything that we're covering via loans from this fund that aren't covered by the other loans that you're recommending?
No, so there is nothing, this fund is not currently paying for anything.
Right.
Is that your question?
No, is this fund capable of paying for anything that other loans aren't?
Oh, I don't think so. So like,
So it's completely redundant?
Are you asking if it's a tool that if it goes away, there's no equivalent tool?
Basically, yeah, or if it's redundant in general.
yeah, I mean, the only potential, if it goes away, then I don't know the mechanism if we wanted to loan money to somebody, although I imagine we probably still could. But yeah, I don't think this is a unique thing that, that we can only do certain things through this fund.
Okay.
And it is duplicative with the other available grant funds, whether it be Main Street, Ford Family,
100% though, as far as we know?
as far as we know.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, just verifying, thank you.
All right, Evan,
Thank you.
it's Evan Donovan here, just so.
Sure, I remember. The URA. When do you think it can start paying back to the general? Do you have any guess?
So I ran some preliminary cash flow stuff. It looks like we would be paying the general fund $200,000 a year for 4 years. $275,000 in year 5, and then it comes back up to kind of where it was and more. And then it would be roughly paid off in 34, 35, fiscal year 34, 35. That could all change if, obviously, if the urban renewal properties are sold and money's generated there, or if there's some other infusion of cash. But that's based on what we know now.
But basically, it's bumpy for 5
years.
and then it starts coming back.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to just make a motion that we move the $841,784 from the Economic Development Loan Fund to the General Fund contingency, withholding $60,000 for economic development for recruiting purposes. Second.
Yes. Right, discussion? No? So having been here when this fund was established. It was all part of what we at that time called the downtown renaissance, when we were making things look better downtown from the way it looked before, which was considerably less appealing than it is now. And we wanted to use this fund to incentivize businesses to do things to improve the appearance and the friendliness of the businesses downtown. And a lot of that has already been accomplished. And also, we did not know that COVID was coming and all the COVID money was coming. And a lot of that was spent for the same kind of things for which this was purposed. And I am glad to see that the motion included leaving the 100,000 and the whatever that other number is, 20,000 in for eventual spending.
Yeah, well, she's pulling just the contingent.
Okay.
So just to clarify, you're leaving $60,000 in this fund. That's what she said.
Right.
So you're moving 804, sorry, I just want to make sure I understand so I can get the crosswalk right. So you're moving 841,784 to the general fund.
Seven hundred and eighty-one, approximately $20,000.
Okay.
Going to contingency, 60,000 goes to economic development for the
Department,
purposes.
okay. Okay, so that's the part I missed. I thought you said you were leaving it here. Thank you.
No, that's it. I think that's a good motion.
Yes.
So is that, wait, is that 60,000 from the 841 or is that 60,000 in addition to the 841?
From
From the,
From the,
the
From
841.
the 789.
Thank you.
from the 841.
I have a question about this actually, so what does that do? We've got 100,000, budgeted for loans and 20 for.
It leaves
Yeah,
it
it
there.
just leaves it there.
Leaves it
Just
there.
wanna make sure.
And it'll roll to contingency in the following year.
If it's not used.
If it's not used. Great, I have the motion now, thank you.
Okay, I mean, I do think, given the circumstances that we're in right now, this is probably the best direction to go. I do want to sound the alarm bells that we do have downtown buildings that are starting to show some signs, like at Longiari's, the building that I'm in. We have landlords that haven't been investing back into those buildings. And I think given the current economic times, they probably won't be anytime soon. And so, again, my worry is that we're using this money and then we won't have a way or a mechanism to really support the intended use of it in the future. So that does concern me, that does give me some heartache, and I do think that given this year, coming years, there are businesses that will need economic help, and so as long as we are ready to help make sure we can fill some of those gaps, I feel a little bit better. But again, that's just my
Are you
warning.
declaring a potential conflict of interest as well?
No.
She doesn't own,
I don't know if she does.
own the building, but you're in premises in the building, and you mentioned your own building and.
I just know that, I've told my landlords, like, hey, the paint is starting to peel off, but it's up to them if they want to invest in. It's not there, we're coordinating somewhere.
Just one comment, when you mentioned Sperling Building. There are a couple of places in town, that and 226 South Main Street, which is Artisans Treasure Building. The council several years ago, passed a resolution to declare dereliction by neglect. And I think that is a tool that the council should look forward to using, because if you raise the level like that and declare a property under dereliction by neglect, then that opens some other doors for outside funding.
Could we do that same thing on Stonehenge?
It's in process.
Yeah,
That one is,
the one we've used it on so far is the Cooper Building.
thank you.
Not the dereliction by neglect is in process, the building is in process.
Let me clarify.
Yeah, I think kind of to go along with what Marilyn is saying, and that Mayor Kate, you kind of spurred this in my mind, that there's a difference between a business and the building, right? We're talking about property owners as opposed to business owners. So if we're talking about trying to get money invested in moving structural business locations, do we have avenues to approach property owners as opposed to business owners? Because it's
Yeah.
not exactly economic development, but it is part of it, right?
Oh, yeah, no, we definitely consider that part of economic development. That's why there's a facade grant, line in here. And yeah, we know most of the building owners as well as the business owners, and we try to get in touch with them and talk to them about conditions of their building. Councilor Ward mentioned the Main Street grant. We've used that successfully on a few different properties in the downtown. So yeah, the tools are there. In many ways, they're, with a building, it's almost a little more clear because it's a physical thing as opposed to, I need money to buy raw product to make my product.
Call for the question.
Member Kirkland?
Aye.
Member Morton?
Aye.
Member Praskovich?
Aye.
Member Roden? Aye. Member Weber?
Aye.
Member Sherman?
Aye.
Member Source,
I,
Member Seiler,
Aye.
Member Port. Aye. Member Christensen,
Aye.
Member Martin Willis. Aye. Member Porter. Aye. Member Schwarzler. Aye. Member Chair Garrison. Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Motion passes.
Very good.
I think then moving on to minutes.
Oh, yeah, the fun never stops.
Yeah. Okay, so it's page 80, I think it's 81 is the description, then 82 is the actual numbers. So I guess this one was actually gonna be fairly straightforward until Courtney decided she wanted to move on to greener pastures. And as before I get into this, I want to make clear, Courtney did decide on her own to move on and, kind of spread her wings and do her own thing. There's, a lot of, I've heard from a number of people that they think that we pushed her out or otherwise, made this happen. I just want to make it clear, she's actually staying all the way through summer so that she can, work on, continue doing this work, carry the events through, and get all this done. And I'm really disappointed that we weren't able to hang on to her because she does great work for us. And I would rehire her in an instant if I could, but she has bigger and better things, and I'm sure she will be very successful at them.
And I would second that 100%. Courtney is better.
So that said, I'll walk you through the numbers real quick and then probably I'll address the elephant in the room, I think. So for the most part, it's, you'll see it's a fairly status quo budget. If, if down a little bit, the major changes are in staffing, and then also in Independence Days. Kind of stepping aside from those first, so staffing obviously has gone down. We're not planning on refilling Courtney's position. So that's gonna be a significant reduction there, and I imagine there's some allocation moving things around as well. You'll see on summer series revenue projected an increase. So first year was kind of a throw your hands up and guess in terms of how much revenue we'd be pulling in for summer series because we never charged for that before. We got a pretty solid idea now, and so I've kind of based this budget on projecting from last year's admissions, and then we got a really good lineup this year, and we're going to put a little bit of advertising money behind it. And so I do expect to bump up admission revenue for that. Going down into expenses, really, I think it's all pretty straightforward. The dues and memberships went up pretty significantly. A big chunk of that is the IT stuff, as we discussed in earlier departmental budgets. And then there's some money for a data platform that we're splitting with the economic development department. And then really, aside from Indie Days, so two things actually. Summer series events, you'll see that that's about 11,000 more than the revenue that's projected. The main reason for that is I plugged in $10,000 for somebody to do sponsorships. Because sponsorships, we're doing really well with sponsorships. We're projecting 25,000 this year for summer series and hoping to do more next year. But it takes a lot of work. It's not just call somebody once and get the money, especially in the dollar amounts we're talking about. You've got to kind of continually be hitting touch points, checking in with them, doing a lot of that. It takes a lot of time. So we really need somebody to do that work. And that's essentially what I plugged that in, is to do essentially some kind of a contract position. And haven't completely figured out what that's going to look like. Because ideally we want continuity with that relationship. We don't want kind of a different person every year handling sponsorships. But that's where that is, because we really do need a sponsorship person. And then the other programs and events, you'll see that bumped up significantly. Courtney did a lot of work with downtown businesses, developing smaller scale events like Touch a Truck, like the kickoff for Glow, a couple of years ago, she did the Shamrock Stroll, which then was passed off to Ida. Did a lot of, developing business programs like Marketing Mondays and Love Local. All of that stuff, kind of again, touching on the, sort of sustaining the economic development work. I'd really like to reserve kind of a small portion of what would, had been going to Courtney's salary to be able to continue some of those kind of programs. And my plan would be to work with IDA and the chamber and other local organizations to do small contracts or something like that, to be able to put on new things or do new programs to sustain, kind of keep that activity and that energy going in the downtown. So that's what that $30,000 is there. Honestly, that's enough if you wanted to bring the scratches back. That would also be something we could, use a chunk of that for. So that's the idea behind that. So talked about all of that. Want to touch on Independence Days. So first off, Independence Days is happening this summer. I think there's been a little bit of confusion about that. So it is definitely happening this summer. As I said, Courtney is staying through the summer. And she's the primary organizer of it. And so we have that opportunity. But the fact that she's leaving is the critical problem with that event. She spends a ton of time organizing that event, really for most of the year. I mean, fall is mostly just a little bit of wrap up and a little bit of after action. But starting in January, the committee's meeting and it really gets rolling and it takes a lot of time. We don't have anybody on staff with, we won't have anybody on staff with the time or the skill set to do that work. And then on top of that, that event sucks up a lot of city staff time, that you can be put to other use. It does, Courtney's done a great job getting it to a place where it's actually pulling in good revenue. And it's, it looks like it's breaking even except for a lot of staff time. And so that's why, knowing that we've got this summer sort of in hand, we really do want to explore, can we work with a, community organization, other folks to hand this off, for next year, have somebody shadow this year, see how it works, do a warrant handoff. We're not obviously planning on just tossing it out the window and saying good luck. But I mean, especially in regard to staff, there's just a lot of areas for efficiency and cost reduction. And that's stuff that can't happen if the city is running it. So that's really the basis for why we're looking at handing this event off. And again, to be clear, we're not saying we want to kill the event. We're saying we want to find a community partner that we can work with to transition this event outside of the city and into the community where it originally started, actually. I think that is all of my notes.
Well, this is the one event that you said is breaking even. It's one that we have increased over time in order for it to pay for itself.
Therapy, it's not breaking even.
Except for staff time.
Except for staff.
So
Sorry. I didn't want to interrupt you.
I understand that there are efficiencies that we could improve to.
It's actually,
my question is
it's actual money. We pay them, counselor. So
Can I finish my sentence before you interrupt me, and then we can get on to how I'm saying everything. What can we do to save the fireworks portion of the event, the hometown fireworks and the Independence Day fireworks? Is it possible to look into saving those two things? Can they be combined with a concert that's already happening in the park so that to the staff levels, and so it's still paying for itself, getting people down in the park, using staff that would already be used to have the concert and keep the fireworks? Maybe get rid of everything else in the park until somebody else wants to take it over, but keep the fireworks. That's what I'm.
So there aren't any staff that would be down there if we don't have Independence Days. We have to pay staff. Period.
So we are gonna have concerts in the park after this year?
So we are going to have some summer series concerts. They are also, and the summer series concerts basically broke even, essentially, except for my time and Courtney's time spent on it, which is significantly less than 4th of July. I think, there is, obviously consolidating to sort of just a fireworks show, maybe even move the fireworks show to a night when we're having a summer series concert. I think, that's something that can be done. The challenge is, if it's not on the 4th of July, this might be a different factor. If it's on the 4th of July, you know, we're still gonna get 15 or 20,000 people showing up for the fireworks show. And so,
we still get wristbands, and didn't Courtney come in last year after the 4th of July? And said that the increase on the wristbands that we did paid for that. Probably expensive.
So a couple of clarifications. One, the fireworks requires personnel. Those personnel are not going to be there for the concert series. Sean doesn't do the fireworks. We have to pay those personnel to be there. Okay,
So
And-
we can find the money for that.
well, yeah, this group has to decide if you want to have a 4th of July party or if you want to have a library. That's what you're doing, but I want to
Oh,
make sure.
I have a lot of suggestions on where we can find money.
So, but I want to make sure that everyone understands that the personnel that do the fireworks are specialty personnel. Right? I can't just go do it, Sean can't just go do it. So that's one thing. Do you want to explain on the money that comes in and goes out? Because no one seems to understand it.
Well, so. Again, so there's. The money that comes in. Is about. Trying to think of how to say this now.
Because it's really complex.
It is complicated, and I heard the comments today where, you know, there seems to be 3 sets of numbers out there. I can walk you through that. The event, the 4th of July event, is break even except for city staff time. When you cost those city staff, it's about $150,000. And that's what accounts for the difference in the cost of the event.
Which I understand that, and I know we talked about efficiencies. I've always wondered, why do we have to have all the finance department down for the 4th of July? Why can't we be more efficient on what staff is actually covering it? If it's just police staff and people who are already taking tickets at the gate, how much more staff do we need? How much more money do we need to keep Independence Hometown Fireworks and the 4th of July fireworks? Those are my questions and I think it is so important for our community that those are reasonable questions to ask to see how much money it's gonna cost for those 2 days. Because I think we have enough great restaurants and bars and entertainment downtown that once we get 20,000 people down there, they're going to fill all those restaurants, all those bars, all those facilities, and bring in money to all those businesses. We've had businesses come in here and say that their money-making time is the 4th of July. If we take this away, how are we going to support our downtown businesses? I think it's an important question to ask and delve into what will it take to save 2 fireworks shows if we get rid of everything.
So my understanding is the cost of the fireworks is roughly $45,000 to $50,000. I can talk with you and with the committee about the numbers that are in this budget. In terms of getting to the details of why there's a number of finance staff down in the park, I don't really have much say over that, but to be honest, even as the finance director, we all just go because we've been needing to do that. That's the way it's been set up.
And also
So-
because the funding is governmental and we can't just have volunteers handling the cash. We have to have people who actually are employees, and the employees to handle that are the finance employees.
So the finance employees are gonna be at every concert series as well.
you know, we don't take cash at the concerts, and that's exactly why. We only take cards.
Oh,
It's the cash that's the problem.
So anyways, in terms of those details, some of that stuff might be able to be worked out. I honestly don't know.
I'm sure everybody would be fine paying in advance for their passes in cash in the Civic Center or paying with card with the date of interest.
I think, I
It's
if I can, I hear your point. I guess my question would be. It would be just as easy for a community organization to do this, and they could probably even make money at it. You know, we've got the connections, we've got the fencing, we've got the wristbands, we've got all the stuff. I mean, if we can work with a community group to bring in the volunteers and handle the staffing, they won't have the same finance rules that we do in terms of handling the money.
But we don't have anybody at this point to take that over, and from my understanding, from our talks, we've so far looked into it and had nobody interested in taking that over. So until we find someone, which if we find someone who wants to take it over, then we can come back and amend our budget so that we can get that money back and they can take it over. But until someone comes in and takes it over, I feel this is critical funding that we need to have funding for fireworks for 2 nights.
And it still doesn't take into account that I don't have the staff. I don't have the staff.
Some of the
Right,
rest of
I
us
think that we
had this
understand that,
conversation.
but let's hear the rest of the people's conversation, and then we'll come back.
There might be some people.
Yeah, so yeah, Shannon?
I would suggest sit in on an Independence Days Commission meeting, to get a full sense of what's involved in this. I was the liaison for 3 years. It was headed by a non-staff member at the time, and there were issues with that, which is why the city had to step in and take over. Not just Courtney, it's a police officer is committed to the effort, a public works employee is committed to the effort, finance is committed to the effort, fire department is committed to the effort. It's a huge planning process. My sense is you've already talked to Ida, you've already talked to the chamber, they don't have the money to do this, they don't have the resources to do this. We need to find a commercial entity to come in and do this, because they're gonna need the seed money to pay for the fencing, for the security and all that other kind of stuff. And of course, they'll reap all the proceeds from that. But I just don't think that, given the staff that we have currently with all the various, everybody's doing 2 to 3 jobs, that they're gonna continue to be able to do this. When I was on the commission, when I was the liaison to the commission, I chipped in, I sold wristbands, I collected money, I did everything I could possibly do to help out, because it's an enormous amount of work. Finance is involved, because when you sell stuff, you gotta bring it to finance so that they can catalog it. And of course, you've got police that are out there the entire time, even though they're not doing the major part of security, they hire security folks to do it, but the commitment starts in January, and it's, it's meetings, it's sub-meetings, it's coordinating contracts. The police have to write security contracts and work with security companies, public works has to do the fencing, they have to do the porta potties, everything else, the cleaning crew, everything else that happens. It's a huge effort, and my thought is, if we can't get a commercial entity to do it, that we pare it down to 1 day. And maybe that's doable. I don't know for sure, but I know it is a huge planning effort. And it's not just the 6-7 months beforehand, it's at least a couple of months afterwards, doing all the, closing the loops and everything. And paying off the contracts and all that kind of stuff. So it's probably more of a 9-month effort than a 7-month effort, but I would definitely, Council Road, I would definitely recommend that you sit in on those meetings so you can get a sense of what's involved. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And I would not want to be involved in that again. I mean, I did it for 3 years and I was exhausted afterwards. And staff is out there almost every single day. They're not just out there doing their function, they're out there every day. And I've been out there, I don't know if you've ever volunteered for Independence Days, but I've lived here almost 11 years now, and I've been out there 10 years. And I've been out there all 3 days every year, and it is a ton of work. And I don't necessarily think, and I may be wrong, because Chair, you brought this up last year about hometown days being really important to the community, and I agree, I would agree with that. But I see more people from outside Independence at the other days. And it's fine if, Salem doesn't do fireworks any longer, Independence has this reputation now, but if we're gonna put on an event, we put it on for our community, not for everybody. And if that means we just keep hometown days and do one thing of fireworks, that reduces the police department load, that reduces the public works load, reduces the fire department load. And it would certainly save an enormous amount of money. My 2 cents.
Jessica.
Okay, I've got 2 questions. So if we were to hand this off, why would it still cost us $143,000?
So these are the amounts for this 4th of July.
Because that's in the next fiscal year.
Still covering it.
Because our budget starts July 1st.
Right, okay, well then why is the
Revenue down.
the
Revenue.
revenue
So the
down?
revenue, because we collect most of the revenue prior to the 4th of July. The sponsorships, a lot of the pre-sales, of wristbands all comes in prior to June 30th.
Also, that's.
So that one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and this is wonky, you guys, because it crosses fiscal years.
Yeah.
So the committee, the 4th of July committee, or sorry, Independence Days committee budgets for an event. We budget for a fiscal year. They don't line up. And that's why these numbers look really wonky. I'm happy to try and explain that and where they lie to you, but that's the crux of it. That's why the numbers are weird.
And then my second question is, so I know that the intent is to find a partner. What happens if we don't?
I mean, yeah, I guess I mean, the option would essentially be, it's, if nobody's interested enough to take it over, it's gonna have to disappear. I will say, to your point about commercial, that is one of the folks I'm talking to is a commercial entity that's interested in it. They're looking at it.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
sorry.
we already discussed the 56,000, that's just a placeholder number essentially.
Nope,
No?
that's the revenue that we expect to collect after June 30th related to this 4th of July.
And why is it down from 312,000?
Because that 312,000 included included 4th of July 23 and 4th of July 24. Because you get some from after the fact for 23 and then all the money in advance for 24.
And then all the wristband pre-sales come in before this fiscal year starts.
Okay. So the loss of the downtown manager appears to have saved 236,000 in salary. Is that just and taxes and benefits? Is that number reflective of just the loss of the downtown manager?
No, there's been some reallocations again back on page 108 or.
108.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then on the Q and A that was posted today, it said that the cost for 2025 was 332,000.
Good.
With revenues projected at 217,000.
Correct.
I'm not seeing those numbers on here,
So let me, and you won't. So let me explain those numbers and
Sure.
that way everybody can, because I hope this helps. So the committee for the Independence Days Committee had budgeted revenues and expenditures of 217,400. They presented a balanced budget. So if I go through the revenues, that $217,400 is split between 24-25, the fiscal year we're currently in, and 25-26. Okay, that's the allocation. If you add those two numbers together, it's the 217,400.
Okay.
Where it gets a little more complicated is in the expense side. The budget document shows 143,400 in 25-26. That's because $74,000 of 4th of July 25, upcoming 4th of July is paid for in 24-25. We have to pay for all the fireworks and a bunch of other stuff in advance. There's also $59,000, which is about a third of the downtown manager salary and benefits. That's not reflected in the committee's budget. They just don't pick that up. It's not direct, like during 4th of July, so they don't pick it up. There's an additional $56,000 also in benefits that are not included in the Independence Days budget. When they put a number in there for personnel costs, it's salaries only.
Okay.
And so adding those numbers together gets me to that 332,000.
Excellent, thank you.
I hope that made some sense.
Hope so.
Thank you.
Couple of things. One, I just want to recognize that throughout this budget process that we've had in the meeting so far, there's been sort of a constant theme of, hey, our staff is really stretched thin, and some questions around why is staff putting time towards that? Should staff be cutting back their time on things? Sounds like staff doesn't have time to be dedicating to other things. So we need to keep that in context as we're talking about this. When we're losing the key staff person that helps run this. And then to say, well, somehow we have to find a way to make it work with the staff that we have. That just has to happen. We can't have it both ways. We can't be questioning, well, why is staff dedicating time to these other things? But yet we want them to be full speed ahead on something that is taking a huge significant effort and it's not a core service maybe that we provide. With that, I am sure many of you have been approached by neighbors and friends and other people with lots of concerns and lots of questions. When I explained to people, which Mr. Irvine had stated earlier, our desire isn't to cancel it. It isn't for this to go away. I think a lot of us understand that it's very important to our downtown business owners. It's very important to just community morale and community everything, but we could scale it back. And a lot of people are just like, yeah, if we scaled it back and just had it like a concert night with fireworks, that's how it used to be back in the day. There used to be boots out, community was involved, the food was provided by, you know, the Boy Scout groups or high school groups trying to raise money. Why can't we just go back to that? And I think that's a really relevant, valid point. It has a community feel to it. I've also heard from a lot of people that while they like it, it's gotten too big for a lot of our locals, and I appreciate that comment. We need to be providing a community effort for our community, and if we're driving some community members away that don't want to deal with the parking or the crowds, or it's just too much, I think that's part of the equation that we need to consider as well. And then in terms of finding another partner, I think they understand how much work it is, and so it's sort of like, hey, here's this great thing that you can do, and they're just like, frankly, we don't have the resources. So I think that's also telling in terms of how big it's gotten. And if we scaled it back to one day and did a really great kind of hometown feel, I think our community would actually be okay, if not happy with
Sure.
that.
Okay, so what I've actually heard more concern about is the fear about the parade.
Yes, they've been enough.
That they like the parade a heck of a lot more than they like the fireworks. And we've spent a lot of time explaining that the parade is separate from indie days. I like fireworks. I think they're cool. I have pride that people come to our community to watch fireworks. I think it's a great show. I also think Salem is back in the game, and if you don't know, they have Little John and the Yin Yang Twins coming to the 4th of July in Salem, so we'll be competing with that this year, but I don't think as many people will be coming from Salem. And I think other communities will want to compete with us on 4th of July, so I think we have to be mindful of, we're talking about cutting services that I think are a little more essential than fireworks. Quoting certain people at this table, you know, there are things that are nice but aren't necessary. And of course, economic development for businesses is super critical. And we could find ways to maybe make it one night. But it's hard for me to justify closing a museum and ending closing days at the library, but having a 3-day fireworks show. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I think if we're concerned about our downtown businesses, let's make an intentional effort to promote our downtown businesses and work with our city staff to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure those businesses are taken care of during that time and integrate them into whatever festival we have. But I do, if I can, Chair, I do have a question for city staff. I've been told historically, you know, back in the day when it was called Western Days and Monmouth and the university were involved in it, they had volunteers who ran most of it, including the fireworks show itself. Do we know how true that is? And are some of those changes probably because risk management insurance and other things are frowned upon, volunteers letting off fireworks?
Yeah, as far as lighting off the fireworks, you definitely need certifications and all of that. My understanding is there's a couple of local folks who have all the certifications and the know-how and all of that. I honestly don't know if they're still being paid or not. I think they might be doing it still as a volunteer thing. The money for fireworks
It's
is literally fireworks. But I would hate to, just said in public session, so I'll probably get quoted on it, but
So then, I guess my other question is, have we engaged the community about if the fireworks show is super important to you, can you work with the city to maybe fundraise for said fireworks, so the city doesn't have to pay for the $400,000 or whatever it is for fireworks? 45.
Wow, that escalated.
But it goes up in big, sure.
My apologies.
I mean, I think
Sorry to give you a heart attack there.
the admission can pay for it, you know, it's especially if we're talking to, even 10 years ago, there was $1, it was $1 to get in on fireworks nights, and that money went towards the fireworks. At that time, it probably didn't actually cover the full cost of the fireworks, but at least it was something. So the admission, definitely can cover the fireworks. It's really more all of the logistics that go around that, where, like I said, an event where you're gonna have 10 to 20,000 people is a significant undertaking, and so sort of the planning and the implementation of that event, even for a one-day event, is significant.
Marilyn? Were you waiting?
Go ahead.
No, okay.
She's got a list.
It's, Marilyn, Alex, Nathan, Bill.
Okay, all right. All right, well, first of all, yes, there used to be a private committee that handled this. I know because I sat on it for 3 or 4 years. And I remember the day when I would walk a coffee can with $2,000 in it from the park to City Hall to try to get somebody to take it to deposit it. We also offered opportunities for local nonprofits to come down and stand at the gate and take money, and they would get a percentage of the money. At one time, that was the funding method for the senior all-night party. But it boils down to that there are 3 ways to handle this. One is by private committee, one is by, which would be a community group. One is by a nonprofit group such as the Chamber or the Downtown Association, and one is by city staffing. And the nonprofit groups with the volunteers just don't have the horsepower to take on this big event. It seems like what we're probably going to have to look at in the future is having an amalgam. Some of everything in order to make that happen. And I think you would find volunteer groups that are willing to help, as long as it doesn't say here, take this all. Because even the chamber, which has a fair number of board members and volunteer opportunities for businesses and local people, they had a vote of the board, and the board said, we don't have the ability to do that. And that was 20-some people voting on that. The nice thing is 2025 is done. It's taken care of for this year. So what we have a whole year or less than, but technically a whole year to think about how to fund this and run it for next year. And just FYI, Hometown Fireworks is a recent addition. It was that was done when the private committee handled the Western, it was Western Days then. And the only reason for Hometown Fireworks was because there was unexploded ordnance. And nobody was allowed to keep it in their garage for a year. Thank you, Alex.
I guess I just got questions about marginal costs for an event. So is a one, the scaled back event seems reasonable in my brain, because I don't thankfully sit on Independence Days Commission, nor will I ever sit on the record. But it's just wondering, from a staff perspective, is a 1 or 2 or 3 day all sort of in a wash from a planning perspective, or what is, I don't guess maybe.
I could speak to the finance department team.
Yeah.
We're talking 12 to 16 hour days in the park. nothing gets done up here.
Sure.
And it's for the day, generally the day before, all 3 days of last year's event. And I know Myra put in tons of hours after the event doing the workups and I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I guess I'm just,
You're talking
no,
about
the-
the planning, how much more, or how much less planning is required for a one day versus?
Oh,
Yeah.
that's not, the margin,
Yeah, how much
that's
does it
exactly
cost?
right.
Never mind.
Yeah. it's-
I mean,
I don't know, okay, I'm gonna, Myra, you hate to talk, and I know you do, but you're the only one we have that might have some insight. Are you comfortable?
Yeah, I would just say it depends too on what you wanna do. If you wanna not have vendors and stuff, that cuts out a big part of the planning. If you just wanna have like a concert and fireworks show.
Yeah.
I would think it would be more similar to the concerts in the park, but just a little bigger. So you probably would still want extra security and people at the gates would, if you're doing wristbands and stuff, but a lot of the other parts of it wouldn't be as much. If you're just doing like a one day type of.
I guess I'm not fully based on, but that's sort of what I'm thinking, right? Like, I would love to see a workout from a budget perspective, like just like what a really slimmed down one day and maybe a hometown, night before fireworks looks like, so putting in 50,000 for the actual ordinance, and whatnot. I don't know, I just,
So you're requesting from me?
well, yeah, I think I am. I think I'd like to see so that we can have a sense of what we're actually working, because we're talking about a very slimmed down event as being important.
You have to include in that too, what kind of seed money we're gonna be.
No, and I, yeah, no, I know that. I know there's a revenue side to it as
Yeah, we
well.
can't wait for the wristband sales to come in, to let contracts.
Yeah,
Or-
yeah, not fully baked on, sorry.
Going on the list for, so right now, we're to meet and we had a question, I'll go to yours, get answered already.
In the interim, I've developed a new question.
Okay.
Yes, I guess my question is procedural. I asked a similar one last time we met, but how much does this body actually have a say in determining what Indie Day looks like? Because we're a budget committee, so we're dealing with the money amount, right? So what can we effectively do in this committee to steer it in that direction without overstepping our bounds? And I guess it's open to everybody, because I don't think, as long as I've been on this committee, we've been able to step in and say, well, we want to see an operational, tic-tac, details here and there. That's not really what we do. So how do we functionally, procedurally do? Because I'm on board with you, like, we don't need, I'm sorry, but the vendors, in my opinion, down there for Indie Day just takes business away from our local
They
business.
do.
Why do we even need them, honestly? So, but to that point, I don't think we can do that. Like,
But
how do we do it?
Procedurally, you could ask for, if I may, Chair?
Yes, please.
Procedurally, you could ask as, committee member Prescott has asked for the information. You could give us, that amount, a certain amount of money. You could say, we want to allocate $50,000. And then we go forth and we do $50,000 worth of work. That's the control you have.
So it's purely money, but there's like a little bit of a
So
note.
we would
attached
just
to it.
pick out a number and give it to you and say, put this
Pretty
number
much.
in.
That's correct. And if we and then we always try to listen to our community, right? I mean, you know that, we're constantly involved. But if it comes to a point where we can only do A with the 50,000, then you're not gonna get the ABC that you want. Right?
Yeah,
That's the.
sorry, I just jumped in, apologize. I'm not aware.
Yeah.
It's gonna take me 50 years.
You're not
Oh, you're on a list.
Yeah, I just wanna respond to that, because I guess what I'm trying, I guess maybe the slightly more baked thought is putting us, like, I would love to put aside like $100,000 for independent, or 75, whatever we agree on. It's like 100 grand for Independence Days for next year, so it's an obviously scaled down version. So we're not directing it necessarily, but we're at least being able to pay for ordinance, staff time, fencing, whatever. I don't know what, I mean, there's constraints, obviously, that the commission gets to, not me,
May I
gets to
ask
deal
clarity?
with.
Yes, please ask for clarity.
Where would we? take
I know,
the 100,000 from?
I know, it's the revenue, I know. I'm not saying that I haven't, again, it's not all the way, we're just trying to like, work through this.
And just to also interrupt, how about having hiring somebody to come in and do an event planning on a contract basis, so we're not paying benefits, and they have to raise their own salary.
What happened to Alex? You know,
All right, so we're on, still
What?
have bills on the list next.
I didn't hear her.
I apologize.
It's on the list next.
I just have one question in three parts.
Yes,
So-
yes, and no.
So just looking at last year, right, the 24-25 go to total personnel services, we got 366, right? Okay. And then looking over at the proposed for 25-26, it's 105. So that means that's what it looks like without any days. Is that correct? Just from the staffing level?
Yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah. yes.
So of that, could we find out what it would look like if we did have somebody else doing it? What staff you would still have to have in place? And then the question would be is, would a company, say a company, just in theory, say a company came in and said, we're gonna do it, or whatever, now there's still gonna be a cost for staff. And would that, sorry?
Why?
Well, I mean, police are still gonna be needed, and there's still gonna be, there's gonna be some staff, I'm sure, from the city that's.
A
still gonna
little
be-
bit, yes, because probably
Oh.
Sean, oh, I'm sorry, Chair,
So
man.
my question would be,
Yeah.
is that a cost that then that person would pay?
Let's have Ken answer that.
So, in general, what would happen is if we pulled a contractor in, we would put out an RFP or an RFQ, depending on which route we went. And then Sean would handle that contract, making sure that they followed it. So there would be some staff time. Yes.
I mean, I guess the other question is, how, you know, on a normal Fourth of July, how many police would normally be on staff? Is it? you know,
Right, because our police, I believe, we would increase some police on the 4th of July. But if we didn't have any days, we wouldn't be involved. Am I correct stating that? And I don't believe that it would just be more of a staffing. We know there's gonna be a lot of people downtown. As opposed to. So, so I can't answer how much that would be. I can just answer that, yes. Mostly it would be Sean's oversight of it. If we went that route. Did I miss anything? Okay.
What's your third part?
Sorry?
What's your third?
That was the third,
Okay.
is would that have to be paid back or something like, would they have to pay for using the park, you know, back in the day?
I think all of that would come out in the negotiation of, you know, somebody might say, hey, we'll take on the event, but we need X, Y, and Z. We would have to work that out.
Right, Dawn?
I just want to remind the committee that this proposed budget already reduced Independence Days from 3 days to 2 days. We've already changed it operationally in that manner, so we've already cut it. I urge that we do this. I dislike it when people say that I don't know what I'm talking about and I haven't sat on a committee. I've always looked at perspectives, like I never tackle a job by its level of difficulty. If it has to be done, I do it. That's what we do. This is an event that needs to be done. If it has to be scaled back, that's fine, but we have to do it. In my perspective, having a fireworks show is what Independence does. It brings people together. It builds our community. We're not only here to support just local people, although that is the major part of it. We have a hotel that needs people to stay in it. We need to bring business here for people to stay in our hotel. We're not just supporting the restaurants, we're supporting the hotel. They bring in revenue from this as well. This is vitally important that we get this done. And it shouldn't take 9 months. When they decided they weren't gonna do the parade, when the Rotary Club decided they weren't gonna do the parade, I took it over. They said I couldn't do it in 17 days. They said I couldn't, it's impossible. I got the parade done. I got 75 entries in the parade. I did it in 17 days. So I don't like it when people say it all the time. It is important that we do this, we get it on the table, we fund it somehow to have fireworks for 1 or 2 days, scale it back. I don't care, but it's something that's really important.
Aaron?
I forgot what I said. I didn't. What I'm struggling here with is not about what the size it should be. Should it be 1 day? Should it be 2 days? Should we have fireworks? Should we not? I hear a lot of we want, I want, we have, it's a community event. I don't see a lot of people raising their hands saying, I'm willing to volunteer. Yes. If it is a community event that is intended to bring the community together, the community needs to own it. Not the city. The city, community needs to take an active role. It doesn't mean you don't partner with a commercial entity. It doesn't mean you don't partner with a nonprofit. But if we want to claim it as ours, we need to be the #1 people standing up for the community event. I don't see a lot of that. I hear a lot of, it's hard, there's a lot of hours, I don't want to be on it, but we all want it. I want a lot of things that I can't have, and I don't have the money for. And so how do I figure out how to do that? Sometimes it's in sweat equity. Sometimes it's showing up. And so in all of this conversation about, should it be 1 day, should it be 2 days? I'm struggling with that. We don't have the resources. And if you're asking me, do I want a library? Do I want a museum? Or do I want fireworks? I want a library and I want a museum. These are the things we need. We don't always get to have the things we want. And you can levy an accusation at me that I've only been here for 5 years or 6 years, so clearly I'm not independent enough for some. I have lived here and lived and worked in this community since I was. I'm well aware of what this community is and how it has developed and changed. I just think that if we're going to find a way forward, it needs to be led by the community and not by the city. It's not the city's responsibility, and it takes a ton of time. These are hours, our planners, our police officers. Sean doesn't have, we're gonna say, Sean, we're gonna give you $60,000 to go out and recruit. By the way, you're gonna spend 75% of your time on Independence Days. What kind of trade-off is that? I'm not asking for it. So I just think that taking a step back and thinking about, because what I hear, and I'm not a fan of debating these things on social media or on Facebook, I just generally abhor those as forums for having debate. But like all the people who want this, sign up for an hour at the park. I mean, that's the most, sign up to take tickets. Put your money where your mouth is. We want it to be a community event. Show up. So all of this aside, that's just how I'm viewing this conversation. And I hear a lot of, this is what it is, this is what it should be, this is who we are. And let's put our money where our mouth is and make it who we are.
Yeah, so I think that my question does lead into that. When it was a volunteer one, I think the city, can I get clarification, like, I know you guys have always been involved. Were you just kind of organizing the meetings for the volunteer group?
Yes.
Or like you just kind of oversaw it? I have a big assumption of being like a
Volunteer.
sub account.
Yeah, I mean, so I was not sort of an active participant back then.
Because it
what-
just needs someone to organize.
Yeah.
Someone to say, hey, volunteers, show up here.
So there was a committee, and the chair of the committee was Janice for many years, and she was really the one who organized it. The city participated in, the police had a representative, Public Works had a representative. But honestly, it was led by volunteers, and we were there essentially to make sure it happened.
Yeah.
With the minimum of problems.
Yeah, because someone needs to call to order the meetings.
Yeah.
Organize it, because I'll tell you, volunteer organizations are hard to wrangle together. So, and it's nice when it's a city that just calls that meeting to order.
So we did, again, informing, we did a very quick look at other cities that have both 4th of July events and other events and who's running them. Does this committee have any interest in hearing that information?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Okay. Chair, do you want me to do a quick read?
Yes.
Okay. Ashland 4th of July celebration organized by the Ashland Chamber of Commerce. Brookings Harbor Love Your 4th managed by a 501c3 nonprofit. Crestwell 4th of July celebration presented by the Crestwell Chamber of Commerce. Eagle Point Independence Day celebration organized by the Eagle Point and Upper Road River Chamber of Commerce. Harrisburg 4th of July celebration hosted by the Harrisburg Community 4th of July Association, a 501c3 charity. Lafayette Fourth of July Celebration and Picnic hosted by the Lafayette Community Activities Team, an independent nonprofit. Port Orford Jubilee, managed by 501c3 nonprofit. We focused in on those that are close in size to us, by the way. Sun River Fourth of July Festival, organized by the Village of Sun River. Other events, Philomath Frolic and Rodeo, organized by 501c4 nonprofit. Willamina Old Fashioned Fourth of July, a community event organized by volunteers. Say, Port Orford Jubilee, managed by a 501c3 nonprofit. Scappoose Community Event, organized by the Scappoose Community Club. Sister Spokes Festival, a nonprofit-run event featuring American blah, blah. Sisters Rodeo, the Sisters Rodeo is organized by a nonprofit. Corvallis Fall Festival, managed by an independent 501c3 nonprofit.
We get it.
Done? I have 4 pages.
I don't, yeah, and I
Can I read
think,
the
because it
budget
takes a,
message again?
it takes a nonprofit to hold those meetings to order. I'm just saying what entity would be doing that, so,
I thought it was interesting.
yeah, it is interesting. Right, Jessica, you were next, thanks for being patient.
Sure, it worked out pretty well. So just to piggyback on this idea of volunteer time, it is a tremendous amount of time. My husband has been on the Indie Days committee for several years, and I have been begging him to quit for years because it takes up so much of his time, and he is a volunteer on that time. And for years, there's been a struggle to have enough volunteers for this event. There's been a call for volunteers, and people are not stepping up to do that. And, you know, I think the idea, you know, the broad idea of having a scaled down version is nice, but also thinking about, like, when you look at what the actual impact is for the community, let's say we had the parade in the morning, which is not run by the city, not funded by the city, we had the parade, but then no other events until the fireworks. How many people that are coming to town are actually going to stay all day with families from the end of the parade, which ends at noon-ish, until
No,
the
just get
fireworks?
downtown to two.
Okay, well, then the fireworks are not
Three.
even until 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I mean, also speaking as an environmentalist, you know, 2 to 3 days of fireworks, there's a lot of damage on the environment, not to mention our local pets and our local veterans who are traumatized by the sounds of the fireworks.
As a veteran, you don't speak for all of them.
I am not a veteran. I know that there's quite a bit of.
But she
research
speaks
on
for those who
that.
are traumatized by the.
There
yeah.
are. I personally
getting off
know
topic.
veterans, I personally know veterans who are traumatized by the sound of fireworks in our local community. So. Again, also to kind of agree with Erin, like. Library, museum to support our local community people that actually live here year round versus 2 days of fireworks. I just don't, I don't think the scale's balanced there.
But they don't need to.
Nathan?
They do for the budget though.
They don't have money.
They do for the budget. There's no money. Like even if we allocated, okay, yes, this committee says we're gonna put $50,000 into this for a 1-day event for 1 more year. But that's $50,000 that's coming from where? Like where are we pulling that
Contingency,
from?
we just refilled and adjustment. I mean, there's ways of looking for it. This isn't a debate.
Yeah. Nathan?
Just in interest of where we still need to go, then if Sean, you still got more funds to go through. But I'm not trying to rush the issue.
It's the Rob show.
I had a thought, and I don't know if this is crazy, maybe half baked, Alex, I don't know, but we're, right, yeah, we're definitely stepping our toes into more like planning committee operations. And I'm wondering if, because we still have the ability as a city for the city council to do amendments to the budget after the fact. And this forum here may not be exactly what we need to plan the future state of Indie Days, because we're not really staff sourced or prepared to do it right now or at the time. So what if, and this is again, a crazy idea, what if the city council could potentially start a working group or subcommittee about the future of Indie Days going forward? Right, I know, but it's currently supposed to do it the way that we've been doing it, right? So I'm saying like, do something separate, something where we get together a core group of people that come up with, you know, throw everything against the wall and see what sticks, bring in experts for advisement or whatever, consultation, but they're not, the idea is not to plan Indie Days the way it always has been planned, but to do something, a new planning steering committee, because obviously there's a lot of options. We don't know what's good or bad at this point. I mean, I don't. I think everybody's got good ideas. I'm totally confused.
Yeah.
That means we need a new forum to decide this, as opposed to trying to do it all in here in the budget committee, which is not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be going through the whole budget.
If this is divided amongst fiscal years, then we have to at least plan for 1 year as we make a transition into a committee taking this over. Because if we don't plan for that, then we're cutting off half of the funding, as we're explaining, for the next year that we will not have, and we will not have the options to put it on the table if we do not look at funding.
But it's not the be all end all tonight, because the city council can do amendments to the budget after the fact. In the fiscal year, after we go past July 1st, and we can immediately start that new commission to figure out what's the new plan. And the city council can take that advisement and then do a budget amendment right away.
And we can do a
Hopefully.
budget amendment in the other direction too, if we find someone to. do
Just
that.
saying, we don't have, thread the needle tonight.
Sure, we can take a break.
It's 8:15. Do you want to take a 10-minute break?
10 minutes.
Recess for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
I have nothing. I didn't.
Correct that with.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Bill?
Yeah.
I'm getting there.
We'll take a.
We're like a little hungry.
All right. So we're gonna come back to our discussion. I do wanna point out that we don't need to be discussing policies and procedures of the Western Days. Our budget, our purpose here is to see if we want to add any amount of money or Independence Days into this budget, and then we would have to take it from somewhere else. So that's what the discussions need to be about, and if we could figure that out, whether it's a smaller event or a large event, doesn't matter, we have to figure out the number that we want to put there if we want to. If we're going to. All right,
I got a procedural question for staff. If we, to go off, Member Christensen's, idea, if we empower a small committee to think outside the box and come back to the council with recommendations within a certain amount of time, say like a month or two, can we, could council accept recommendations and amend current budgets to reflect that?
There can be amendments after it's adopted.
Okay.
They also have the authority to make certain changes upon adoption, which we hope is gonna happen at the June 10th meeting.
Not the changes, the adoption. We hope the
We
adoption.
hope the adoption is going to happen at the June 10th.
Right.
But currently we have a 56K placeholder.
That 56,000 is
Expected revenue.
for
revenue.
this year, for 4th of July 25.
Yeah. Because expenses for this will be in the next year's budget, not this coming, this one after. Yeah. I would like to point out that, so this is a tourism and events fund. And what is the purpose of this fund? To create tourism and event, bring business to town, right? That's the whole bit, point of this. If we got rid of any type of seed money for the Independence Days, I know that it would hurt downtown businesses, 100%. I know several of them, it's a large part of their budget. And things they use to pay for integral pieces of their business. So going to, do we want to spend the money here, or do we want to spend the money at the museum or the library? Without those businesses, they're not paying the taxes to fund the library and the museum, and then we spiral down and keep on going. So do we invest in this and then the downtown businesses and see that growing, or not? Because I know this will hurt a lot of businesses now. We got really, it didn't even get seed money. Some form of seed money for this event.
So then we just need to know how much and where we would get that from, because
Yes.
I think it's important to support downtown businesses. I think it's important to keep this alive. So I could make a motion to. I mean, I have a whole list of things that I would like to bring up at some point that are going to cut money from our budget so that we can decrease this deficit we have, so that we can better support our police department, so that we can better support these things. But in the meantime, because I know I'm gonna hit this wall, I am not opposed to taking up to $100,000 from the general fund contingency budget to support Independence Days for the next fiscal year, because we have to pay for it this year in order to support the next fiscal year. But we need to guide our community and staff if we can't sustain this into a longer transition period for a organization taking over. We can't just do this overnight when the city is done. So. If anything second beyond that, I would be grateful.
Let's be, say, sorry, $100,000 this year.
$100,000 seed money to use that to get people to have some sort of funding to keep this going, even on a scaled down version, so that we keep some sort of Independence Days in the works.
I'll second.
And it was a motion to move 100,000 from the general fund contingency to the independence day. Okay. Thank you.
Nathan first.
Procedural, or just clarification, I guess, the 100,000 from the
740.
what we just moved a few minutes ago, or a few hours ago at this point. Okay, all right, and then I guess my discussion point on that, if I can tell real quick, is I would like to defer that decision point for the dollar amount to be contingent upon what this. I'm just saying it's a recommendation. I'm not saying anything about the motion. Anything about the motion, Rob? I'm saying,
Yes, that's
My-
fine.
I'm saying, I don't like the idea just because I do like the idea of potentially putting seed money in Indie Days in the future. But I'd like to have a more better informed, long form discussion on it with experts that know what they're talking about for more than just an hour in this forum where we're not really supposed to do that anyway. And then we put a number on it, because I think we've already discussed that this council can make those amendments once they are fully informed. So that's my position. Not that I don't want seed money for any days, but I think I want that number better informed rather than just arbitrarily 100 for whatever reason. I think.
Evan, you're next.
So, I mean, I think that we need to have a subcommittee figure out what the right is. It could be 100. And then be super intentional about it, because I mean, I think what Councilor Roden is saying is true. I mean, that it's an important event. If we want to hand it off and we want it to be successful, we need to do it in a really smart, intentional way. So I just guess I gotta figure out how I'm gonna vote.
Shannon.
I guess it's a procedural question. I'm in favor of having a body look at this, with more rigor. But who has the authority to say, form a body to look at this?
The council has the authority to form an ad hoc committee. In fact, I think I have the authority to form an ad hoc committee to recommend to me, and then I could recommend to the council. So we go two different routes, but I would recommend the council create an ad hoc or ad hoc.
Marilyn.
First of all, yes, I am definitely in favor of continuing 4th of July and Independence. One of the comments that I've heard about why has it gotten shorter, and part of the reason it's gotten shorter is because there's no more carnival. There aren't traveling carnival shows like there used to be. They kind of went away with the advent of COVID. And that was what kept people coming downtown on the days when there weren't fireworks. Also, originally, the whole purpose of having vendors was to give local nonprofits and youth groups a chance to earn some money during the summer. And I think we've let a lot more groups and things come in that take away from that and take money away from our youth groups. And with all those things in mind, I would really like to see some kind of a summit or an ad hoc committee or a discussion group formed to meet in January to discuss 4th of July for 2026.
Start in September.
Do
We
it,
should meet in September.
do it in August.
August.
Okay, that's good too.
Yeah. Yeah.
After this 4th
And I
of
think
July.
that's what we're saying, like, we're just discussions about, we want that money
Yeah,
there.
let us get past Hop Festival and Ghost Walk and I'm
Yeah.
all for it.
No, Marilyn, we want you to do all at once. All right, Bill.
Just question, is there not already seed money? Because I know that when we talked about looking at the next year, there was, and if we were to give to somebody else, there would be some seed money to pass. Did we not have that discussion?
No,
We have the
we're,
discussion.
we're projected to lose $115,000 next year.
Great.
I'm asking for less than what maybe normally would have, and it doesn't have to all be spent. And if we find a committee that decides not to, like, they find a cheaper way of doing it or someone to take it over, then we can come back and take the money back. But as city manager West has told me,
many times, and I'm starting to listen, but I do listen. Things in the city move incredibly slowly. And I'm afraid if we do not fund this tonight and get the money on the books, it will take too long to get this back for us to see. That's my fear. I think it's really important that we put this out here now.
Alex is next, and then.
Yeah, I think I'm inclined just as a place, just almost as a placeholder piece. And then there'll be, yeah, I know, like, I mean, yeah, again, we're big thoughts at this point. Not big. But I do think it's an important piece. Like, I mean, it drives a lot of, you can speak to that, Chair, about sort of what drives, and I know Mitch was here last week talking about it too. It feels like a cornerstone kind of piece. But I also worry that if it goes to like 60 to 0, that we're not giving it a good chance for anybody to do anything. So.
Jessica was next.
Okay, is there anyone, I know that you've already been talking to people, is there an interest from any of the potential people that might take this over? Do we have any leads at all?
So like I said, I've talked to a private entity that expressed interest, and I have not, they were gonna go back and do some figuring and get back to me, so I don't. They were initially interested, whether they're still interested, I don't know. And then I'm actually talking to a couple more folks tomorrow from community organizations that at least want to talk about it. And so I won't put words in their mouth about how interested they may or may not be.
And then, Evan, did you say that Salem is doing theirs again?
Yes.
So they did. So they went 1 year without doing it, correct? Was it just 1 year that they didn't do?
They actually did the Fairgrounds last year.
Right, Shannon. I'm sorry. Basically,
I do, but they're not fully formed and I'm just having trouble.
I'll put you back down.
Okay, great, yeah.
Yeah.
To Marilyn's point, for the past few years with Independence Days, we have tried to get community groups to volunteer. Boy Scouts, Central Cheerleaders, they don't want to do it. Too much work. I'm in favor of the proposal to form a subcommittee group. I think that we need to do that quickly because we need to get Courtney's input. Because Courtney's got the knowledge and the experience and the continuity, and we need to have an understanding from her of what's involved, because I can tell you from my experience, she runs it much more efficiently than the commissioner who was there before. It was just a volunteer. We had 3-hour-long meetings with that person. Courtney's got it down to an hour, maybe less. And it's a very well-oiled machine. So I think that committee could learn a lot from her. But if she's leaving shortly, we got to get on the stick.
Dana.
I guess just to follow up on Don's point, yeah, if we don't move quick, it's probably not gonna happen and won't work out. So I'm in favor of moving forward with our motion. Possibly even independent of pausing for the forming of the committee. Thank you. I haven't slept enough. But yeah, I just want to put that out there. I do think that we need to move forward quickly on this if we're gonna move on it.
Yeah. Couple things very quickly. I mean, I think this event has always been important to our downtown business owners, even when it was Western Days or whatever. I think we can all agree that it brings people downtown, people shop and eat. My concern with bringing in a lot of these outside vendors is that it actually hurts our local businesses or can. So I would like to see something where we are driving food and beverage sales to our local businesses or supporting a local organization that could use it for fundraising. I think with that though, when it became like this 3-day, 2.5-day event, that probably does put too much of a burden on some of our local groups that are like, we can't sustain 3 days of this activity, but we could concentrate on 1 day. So I'm hoping that if it were a shorter, more concentrated effort, you could bring back some of those organizations that could do something like that. This is exactly what I was worried about when we moved the contingency funding of like, oh, now we have this pot of money that we can just go ahead and we can use this for that. I am really, really, really concerned about some structural issues with our budget that are not just this year, but next year as well. And if we kind of keep pushing things down the road, and I think unfortunately where our community is at, they will have to lose things and understand that things are literally going away. We're not joking, we're not bluffing. The museum is gonna go away. 4th of July could go away unless these community-led efforts, the community steps up. And that we may, just as painful as that is, that may need to happen before we get the community to step in and change.
Chair, may I follow up to Mayor Kate's comment? So I was looking at the other budgets and we as staff, what you decide to do is what you decide to do for the community. So I'm on board as heck and I'm sorry. But I want to remind you that in 2023, in the budget message, I said, it has become clear that the general fund is not sustainable. We need to explore additional revenue sources for the general fund to continue to support general services, such as police, library, museum, and parks. 2024 and 2025, I said, even with the reduction in workforce where we laid people off, services and expenses, the city faces significant financial precipice and shortfall in its general fund for 2025, as we noted in the 2024 budget. In this budget message, the city's general fund is fiscally unsustainable. We must either increase revenue or reduce expenses to permanently address the instability. As I've said, when you move that money, that is one-time money into the contingency. From a staff level, I have to keep the lights on. We have a fiscal deficit coming. We have a cliff, we have a precipice. I don't know how many other words to use to make it clear we are broke. The more money you take from the contingency, you need to be aware, I can't keep the lights on. We almost had 0. I can't keep the lights on. Right? I don't know. I have other city managers saying to me, what are you going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. Because if we have no contingency, I can't keep the lights on. So I need you to think about that. This is one-time money. Mayor Kate's not wrong, and from a staff level, you will put us in a position where I have to lay people off. I have to close departments. I don't have a choice. If I want to keep the lights on, please remember that. If you remember that and you want to put $100,000 in there, we'll do it. We'll do it. That's what you tell us to do. But I need you to remember that's the first step. Then there's the second step. And when I run out of money and I don't have a contingency to go to, I shut things down.
I was wondering, instead of out of the contingency, if we could take it as out of the economic development loan fund. So we have $100,000 placeholder for economic development loans. Could we loan that to a nonprofit seed money for a place or something like that, instead of not taking it out of our contingency?
So essentially you do like an economic development loan
Loan.
to an organization.
So then they could have seed money to set up the 4th of July. And do stuff, and then we wouldn't have to reduce our contingency. Could be,
Yeah, I don't see why not.
even a business, like a business, they're gonna take it on, they're gonna have a lot of upfront costs, could they do a loan? And you make it an incentive, like a enticing loan to them. Like, we'll loan you this money, like a super low interest, when you get the money next year, it's back.
Yeah, I mean, that money is,
Cause we have that $100,000 placeholder there in that fund.
There's nothing that says you can't. We do have.
I know, I just wanted to know if there were other options.
But it's nothing we can do right now until we have somebody who's with stuff. That would be an action for later, but we do have a source for that money.
Jessica. I just have a question about when you're saying out of the economic development loan fund. Would that be taking money then, now since we've moved the contingency, would that be taking money out of that $100,000 amount for economic development loans? Well, I'm gonna step out there and say, I move to. Sorry about that. Do we have a second on that motion?
Yes.
We're in the middle of discussion of that motion.
Okay,
All right, Bill.
I just wanted to go back to her point where if right now, the budget as it is in front of us, it's saying we can't do any days. And if we throw another $100,000 from another fund into this, then we're still asking the staff to do what they already do for next year, but with less resources. And I just don't think that's fair. I think that if we say, hey, we can't afford to do this, you're gonna have to stand up and step up and make it happen, or it doesn't happen. But that's the forcing, that's the tipping point there. That's my 2 cents.
Aaron?
I think I would just like to associate myself with the comments of the mayor. The structural concerns are deep. I think what we are asking of our staff is bordering on disrespectful. And I'm just gonna be a no.
Just like to remind everybody that last year when we were in this budget committee meetings, we knew what City Manager West was putting forth. She told us it was very clear what our general fund was gonna look like. Yet we had our current mayor push forward a budget that we did not have the opportunity to try to correct or curb these events. The current mayor did that. We're setting forth with that when she pushed forth the motion to accept the budget last year as we did. We did not have the opportunity to correct it. So now we're hitting hard times and hard choices and hard things that we're going to have to face. And I'm willing, and I've come up with many ideas where we can try to trim the budget. But Independence Day is an asset to our community, is an asset to our downtown. So I would like to just call for the question so that we can just get this motion cleared up. Call for the question needs a second.
Call for the vote.
Call for the vote. Call for the vote, more discussion.
A second.
So now we need to vote on and vote for the question.
Oh, we'll vote on that first. Okay. So. We're gonna call for the question.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, vote for the call for the question if we're gonna have a vote to vote.
Correct.
Okay, Chair Garrison.
Sure.
Can we start somewhere else? It's just a call for the question. We're voting to vote on the motion.
To end discussions.
Yes.
Correct.
I. Member Schwarzman. Aye. Member, Porter. Aye. Member Martin Willis.
Aye.
Member Christensen.
Aye.
Member Ford. Aye. Member Seiler.
Aye.
Member Source.
Aye.
Member Sharman.
Aye.
Member Boisvert.
Aye.
Member Roden. Aye. Member Braskovas.
Aye.
Member Morton. And member, Parkin.
Aye.
Okay.
Motion passes. Now, Chair, you can vote on.
Now you can vote on the motion to move $100,000 from the general fund contingency to Independence Day, correct? Okay. Member Parkin.
Nay.
Member Morton.
nay.
Member Praskovas.
Nay.
Member Roden. Aye. Member Boisvert.
Nay.
Member Sharman.
Aye.
Member Source.
Nay.
Member Seiler.
No.
Member Ford.
No.
Member Christensen.
Nay.
Member Martin Willis.
Nay.
Member Porter.
Nay.
Member Schwarzler.
Nay.
And Chair Garrison. Nay. Okay, motion does not pass.
Yes, motion. I think that it would be to our advantage to make some effort at good faith at keeping this going, Independence Days going into next year. not devoting a lot of money to it, but devoting enough for seed money. And since I know that fireworks cost about $40,000, I would like to move $40,000 as seed money into Independence Day's fund and do so from the Economic Development Loan Fund. I'm getting tired. So moving 40,000 instead of 100.
From the Economic Development Loan Fund to
Into-
the Economic Tourism Development.
Which
Just
would
line
line
item
item
of
for the fireworks,
Independence
and then we can work on developing a community group.
Second that.
First, second.
Discussions.
Yeah. When you were talking about that idea, which was a really good one a few minutes ago, Sean, was that was that the money that was in the Economic Development Fund could be
I would say, I thought loan,
loan,
as a
not
loan.
moved in the budget,
Yeah, loan.
loaned to a business to
Or
incentivize
the
them.
nonprofit, or, and they would have to. pay back.
Okay,
But that's not what,
To do that would require no action.
it
in
wouldn't
the
require
budget.
action, because that would be
Right.
something.
Okay.
Sean would
What
do
you
to a business.
propose does.
He would go out and
move
solicit
money.
that.
all right, so do we need to do anything action wise tonight in order to make a loan happen?
No.
Then I withdraw my motion.
Withdraw my second.
We have nobody to accept the loan. That's why we do it as a transfer between funds so that we still have money for the 4th of July. It makes more sense that way instead of waiting for someone to come in and take it over. If someone comes in and takes it over, then we're great. So I'll make a motion that we transfer $45,000 from the Economic Development Fund into the Independence Days Fund, the loan fund, sorry. To the Independence Days Fund to keep fireworks in next year's budget. Doesn't change our contingency, it was one. We would now have a smaller amount to loan out to businesses that we haven't loaned out for years to use to help our downtown businesses stay alive during the 4th of July. I think we understand the motion.
Should have a second. Motion dies for lack of a second.
But I would really like to see that loan go to some type of company for the Independence Days.
And we'll, obviously, we're gonna keep working. And talking about the idea of a scaled down event as well, I mean, that might, I think as was mentioned, that might be more appealing if we say, look, it doesn't need to be a 3-day event, it could be a 1-day event, you know, something like that.
Chair, can I ask you a question
Yes.
about that? When this was pitched to other community events, was it pitched as is, or was this pitched as like just any version of it?
It was pitched as Independence Days and.
To the end,
Yes, and we're happy to talk about whatever you might want, you know, that to be.
Whether it's 1 day or 3 days.
I lost track.
okay.
Sorry, I was listening.
In your discussions with Ida and the chamber, do you think they would be more open to it if they knew they could get a loan for the seed money?
So. If it was for a 2 or 3 day festival, I think probably not.
But they could scale it as it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't want to go any farther than that, putting any words in people's mouth. But I will definitely be having follow-up conversations based on this conversation.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. Bill.
So I know there was a little bit of discussion. I know that we at least went to the chamber and asked them if they would take it over. I know there's an independence commission that dropped in front of you guys use that. Is there a way to maybe try to get a bunch of the groups, I know Rotary, all of these other people together to take it on as a whole? To kind of share that, you know? So if one organization says no, and from what I understand, is it wasn't about the money, it was about the lack of volunteers. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is
So
correct.
we all, as a community, consolidate, then this is probably something we can figure out.
That's why I feel like we need some kind of community
Yeah,
summit,
for sure.
because there are people who are not engaged in organizations who would help us. But they just have to be asked first.
Business leaders in the community
Think
have
we-
vested interest.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Rather than have a separate committee, we have a community discussion
Yes.
summit and bring everybody in. This is your chance to say what you want Independence Day to look like and what are you willing to do to get it there?
And then that we could do fairly quickly. It just takes some advertisement and some encouragement.
And we know there might be money available to proceed.
Yeah.
This is our one, because that's good.
I know.
It's an integral part of it. It's how I pay for all my insurance for all the years. So now I have to figure that out for my budget for my first.
Well, if I may.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, for thinking of the community as a whole. It's very appreciated.
Right, Alex.
I just wanted to also point out, I guess I keep going back to your comment about amendments and things like that. It sort of depends on how it goes, but I think so I don't feel it's not quite as,
It's not dire.
yeah, right. I mean, it is dire. It is dire.
Holistically, it's dire,
Yeah.
but tomorrow we could set up
That's, I guess
a
that's.
steering committee that could solve this in a deliberate way, as Evan's saying, like we don't have to do it here, where everybody's looking at their clock for the last hour, like.
Yeah, that's,
We need another form. We need another. It's not a summit. We need somebody, a group of experts to get together for multiple days and put stuff up on a whiteboard and we figure it out.
And invite those youth groups that would like to be down there making some money too.
Yes.
That we've discussed this.
But that's not the charge of this
We
organization.
have the Ron has knows our point of view and knows what we're doing,
Yeah,
knows
definitely.
where the committee, and then council can further look into this. Yep, that where we're next.
Page 83.
83,
We're
on we move.
through this.
We only have a few more funds. We can actually probably bang through these fairly quickly.
It's 9 o'clock.
If the committee wants, it's up to the committee.
Can we just finish these last
Yeah,
three?
let's get through it.
Let's get them through.
okay.
Okay,
They're not long discussion funds.
so the grants fund, I mean, you can see what's budgeted. We have only budgeted grants that we have in hand or have been awarded. We know that they're coming in. That's a change from prior years. So, real quickly, if you want, I can tell you what's in these, or if there's, I guess, how much detail do you want me to go into?
I don't think, this one's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think we go over too much.
The, page 85 is presented for information only, as is page 86. There is no budget for 25-26, but we have to include it under Oregon local budget law. We've already covered the budget for facilities vehicles on page 88. And we covered the capital projects fund on page 90. Thank you to the Public Works Director. And this brings us into the debt service funds. This is really quick. All of these simply budget the resources and the debt service. That's all that's in these. So on page 92, the general obligation bonds, these are the ones that were issued in 2013. We budget property taxes coming in that we levy, and when you adopt or when you approve the budget, you will approve amount of property tax that will be levied for these bonds. And we budget the principal and interest payments going out. You'll see there's a small ending balance there. That ending balance is equal to the first interest payment in the next year. And what that does is buys us a little bit of room if something goes sideways. Flipping the page 93 and 94, this is the Minet bonds. The resources coming in are payments from Minet. The payments going out are principal and interest on those bonds. You'll see they're equal except for a small amount of beginning balance that came from interest earnings over the last couple of years. I happened to meet with the Minet people today. We looked at their cash flow projections. We believe there is no issue with them paying their debt payments in the 25-26 year, or for that matter, ongoing. Page 95, the special assessments fund.
I was just gonna run that.
Yes,
Are we ever going to be able to open the accounts that we have written off as uncollectible?
I can tell you that there has never been an amount written off as uncollectible from my debt. Absolutely.
They were just identified as that,
There is yes, there
but
is.
they weren't.
So the
Charged off.
explanation of that is there has never been an amount written off, taken off of our books. That receivable remains there. There's a reporting convention that established an allowance for doubtful accounts. Okay, and it is equal to the amount of the receivable on our audited financial statements. That was done at a time when there was some question about the risk of them being able to pay us back. In my professional opinion, that risk no longer exists, and we'll be talking to our auditors about the process for removing that allowance. It's a big deal because it throws a big gain onto the financial statements in the year that you do that. Because you took a loss in the year that they put it on there. So but it's a paper thing. We have never written off an amount receivable from finance. All right. Page 95, the Special Assessments Fund. So what this fund was established to do is when we make improvements, the city makes improvements like to a sidewalk in front of your place. We do the work, we bill you for your share of that. We borrowed the money at some point to make those improvements. Those loans have been paid off. People continue to make their payments to us, so we still have some money coming in each year, but there's no budgeted monies going out. At some point, we can close this fund. That money will be transferred to the general fund eventually when this fund is no longer needed. But it's not gonna be a big amount. Don't get all excited.
No, what's the time?
Yeah.
Listen, we're trying to.
It's a handful of years.
Okay.
It's not a long time, but it's more than 2.
Okay.
Sorry.
So like the ending balance, we can't transfer that out now or?
No, because we can't dissolve that fund yet.
Oh.
Sorry, nice
Would it
try.
be $5 in it?
Page 98.
I think that's a no.
Page 98 is a summary of all of the city's debt. We put this in here thinking that this would be helpful to you all because there's been a lot of talk about external debt, okay? So that's there. And now, really quickly, we can talk about urban renewal.
That's the right.
Page 100, there's urban renewal funds in the
Oh, yeah,
city's
sorry.
budget.
Sorry.
So what I talked about a little bit earlier is, so the Urban Renewal Projects Fund, the one on the top of page 100, what we would do is reduce the amount of interfund loan repayment and the interfund loan repayment interest. I have to go back and figure out how much of the payment to the general fund was interest, and how much was principal this coming year. And reduce that to a total of $200 instead of
200,000.
200,000, sorry, instead of 500,000, which is what it was. Okay, so that basically just reduces the expenditures. It will increase the ending balance in this fund. Understand that ending fund balance is not the same as cash. That's the issue. Okay, this fund, if you were to look at the balance sheet for this fund, there is negative cash. But there's $1.4 million in property held for sale. And the offset of that gets you to what your fund balance is. So there's a difference. And I need you to just, I guess, either understand that or trust me, because it's not cash. That's why we're having to do this, is to reestablish cash balances in this fund. Okay, because this fund is in a deficit cash position and has been for years. So we're fixing that. It's gonna take 2 or 3 years to fix it. Okay. On the Urban Renewal Debt Service Fund, there's property taxes that come in, tax increment financing, and debt service going out. And this is where all of the bonds and the IFA loan to Business Oregon is. All of the debt service up in the Urban Renewal Projects Fund is to the city, either to the general fund or to the SDC fund. That's how it's split. And that brings us to the end. My presentation. God.
In the general.
No, that's
In the-
it.
In,
We're
no,
done.
in the city.
Yeah, the city. So. We can recess.
Yeah, I'll need a motion to recess.
Or they could.
Or we
I
can
think-
discuss about it,
Yeah.
about it
That's how to
tonight.
stay all night.
Would you like to talk to my wife?
Well, we still have to open urban renewal.
Yeah, we need to.
So we
open-
have another meeting that we still need to do after this. It's open.
We can do that one.
I hope to discuss this until.
Yeah, next Wednesday at 6:30 p.m.
Second.
Discussion. Right, call the vote.
Chair Garrison,
Aye.
member Forsler. Aye. Member Porter. Aye. Member Martin Lewis. Aye. Member Christensen.
Aye.
Member Ford. Aye. Member Seiler. Yes. And member Thor.
Aye.
Member Sherman.
Aye.
Member Boisvert.
Aye.
Member Roden. Aye. Member Paraskevas. Member Morton.
Aye.
Member Carmen.
Aye.
Okay,
Okay, so we are
Thank you.
recessed until next week,
yeah, so now you can.
and we'll be upstairs next week.
Well, no, we're gonna,
Yeah, right here.
yeah, right.
All right, so we still need to, call to order, the urban renewal budget meeting. Reconvene. Yes.
Okay.
Lord, I want this.
So what I need on this is a motion for on the second page, or the first page 3. Sorry about that. For the Urban Renewal Projects Fund. I would need a motion to reduce the debt service by $300,000. It's in the other packet, sorry.
So at the original budget meeting, you should have received a small URA packet. Does everybody still
It was
have
in the
that?
front cover. It was in the front cover of your binder.
I have it, I just didn't know which page 3.
Yeah, the first page 3. Sorry, at the top, it says Urban Renewal Projects Fund, 441. So I need a motion to reduce debt service by $300,000.
I move to reduce debt service by 300,000 on page 3, number 2 in the urban renewal budget package.
Second. 1 second. Discussion.
I don't know what we're looking at. I don't see where. I don't know.
Or can you just say
We'll show her.
the number?
Is there a line number?
Yeah, the line number.
It's line number 81130 and 81230. I have to figure out
I see
how
that
much
now.
was on each of those.
Got it.
Okay, sorry. I apologize for the confusion here, you guys.
Okay.
So I've got a motion and a second
What was the motion?
to reduce debt service by 300,000.
Reduce which line item by?
It's a combination of 81130 and 81230. The combined total of those will reduce by 300,000.
So you go from 1.1 down to 800.
Correct.
Yeah.
And why are we doing that?
Because they can't afford to pay the general fund.
That's part of that report that we talked about, the beginning council, that it just came in this last week.
Thank you.
I mean, I think we understand the money is just physically not there, so. Unless we want to start printing money, we need to prove this.
Please.
So-
Oh, sorry.
We're ready for a vote.
Member Karkinen.
Aye.
Member Morton.
Aye.
Member Paraskevas.
Aye.
Member Roden. Aye. Member Boisvert.
Aye.
Member Sherman.
Aye.
Member Force.
Aye.
Member Seiler.
Aye.
Member Ford. Aye. Member Christensen.
Aye.
Member Martin Lewis. Aye. Member Porter. Aye. Member Forsler. Aye. Chair Garrison.
Aye.
Thank you. And you can recess this meeting unless y'all want to
Do you
approve it.
want to
discuss this budget and approve it, or you wanna recess?
Move that we recess.
Second, Don,
And then who's second?
Paul,
Also,
you second, okay. Alright, can we just do a vote, like an overall vote? All in favor?
Voice vote?
Opposed? No, those are carries.
Thank you all very much.